This video is called Why I Don't Like Metallica Part 2, because I had a terrific response to my first one, and some good points and some points that I don't agree with were brought up. So I'd like to address those points right here, right now. And I'm in a nice park-like setting. It's nice and peaceful, because that was one of the rebuttals, is that they liked videos that were more people that used a kind voice and nice music. So I'm putting some very nice music on here and I'm speaking kindly. So let's start there. The person who rebutted me and said that I was being ugly in my indictment of Metallica and all these other bands. It's okay for Metallica and all these other bands. Judas Priest, AC/DC. Yes, I'm from the 80s. I know there's tons more today and they're doing the same kind of shit, but I'm just not aware of them, right? But you're all on the hook too. So it's okay for these people to say completely shitty things with completely horrible, grinding, raunchy music. And these people influence millions and millions and millions of people. It's okay for them to be ugly and use horrible music and to say totally shitty things with their leadership as they influence millions of people. But when I make a video to call them out on it, I have to use gentle music and use kind words with nice music in a nice flowing green park-like setting, okay? As I call these idiots out on their crap. I had 2 people agree with me, one totally, thank you very much. I had one person agree with me partially, and he made a good point, which I agree with. He said that to some people, it's not an issue. And I have a lot of friends that that's true. So the things that Metallica says and all these other bands say, it doesn't affect them, so fine. Then you're not the people I'm talking to, okay? But he made the point that there are people who it does affect, okay? Impressionable people. And who's the most impressionable in society? Kids. So it affects them, and he was right, okay? So people that it affects. And you guys, Metallica, and all these other hundreds and thousands of bands need to be aware of that your music is affecting people who are affectable, namely kids. Okay? So, to get back to the thing of I was told I was being ugly in my video. So, here's some ugly examples that I can think of just with Metallica and just with the songs I knew in the 80s. Yes, I'm 30 years behind the time because I got that rebuttal too. That was 30 years ago, Jesse. Of course, Metallica is more influential today than ever, so that argument is right out the window. And there's more kids to influence these days. So, here's the ugly things that Metallica does. Number one, I've been to their concerts, and they led the entire crowd in a chant of die, 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 die. I don't know, for a minute? 2 minutes? I don't know how long, right? So, is that beautiful? Is that kind? Is that loving? As they're influencing? Because that's what they're doing. They're exerting their influence over people. Is that ugly? Or is it more ugly when I call them out on it? And by the way, when I was at that concert, I wasn't doing it. I was actually chanting, live, live, live. Here's another example, example number 2. Let's say there's some guy and he's been drinking and listening to the song Battery. And it just went over and over in his mind. Is that ugly? Or is it more ugly when I call these idiots out on it? Because they're influencing millions of men and women who have the words to Battery going over and over in their minds as they're drunk or high, or even not drunk or high, and they act out on it while they're beating the crap out of their spouse. Am I ugly for calling them out on it? Example number 3. Okay, let's get back to the soft, kind voice. I was told I need to speak with a soft, kind voice because it's more enjoyable to watch those videos. Okay, here you go. Ready? James Hetfield doesn't speak in a soft, kind voice, nor do all these other idiots growling on their songs. They growl and snarl and curse and say the most shitty things imaginable. Just look into it a little bit. Not all bands. There's some good ones. But a lot of these bands, hundreds. I could name them off. I've already named a few. but whatever. You all know who they are. Way back from the starting probably in the 60s. I don't know. It wasn't around. Definitely in the 70s. For sure in the 80s. Definitely in the 90s. Never since. It's been happening ever since. Not all bands, but there's plenty of them. Okay? And what do they growl and piss and moan about? Oh, you know, hopelessness, fears, suicide, insanity. All this, all this crap. Right? And they don't say it nicely. They don't use a nice, calm voice when they say it. They actually blend it with extremely loud, aggressive, raunchy music. But when I call them out on it, because they're influencing millions of kids, I get called out for not using a nice voice. So there you go, James and all the rest of your little cronies that think it's so cool to do what you do. I'm using a nice voice. Okay, so the next issue that was brought up was freedom of speech. I was told that, Jesse, you sound like you want these people to be censored. And I don't want them to be censored by any governmental agency or any official agency at all. You know, I want them to be censored by themselves. Why? For love. Because of love. Because love always censors itself on behalf of those around it. Because, as I said in my last video, and most people missed it, maybe I didn't say it. I'll say it now, but I'm pretty sure I did. Freedom that is untempered by love always hurts somebody. Always. So, in America, we have this value of freedom of speech, and it's a good value. I agree with this value. It's a very high, very important value, right? Freedom of speech. It's one of the things that makes America great. I agree. However, there is a higher value. And that value is love, as I said in the previous video. Love gave birth to freedom. And love governs freedom as the law. It's a law of existence in the universe and life. It governs freedom, and it governs every other law in existence underneath it. Love is the law that rules them all. So, there would be no freedom apart from love. And freedom that does not censor itself always hurts somebody. Which is my point. So, I say to all these bands, you guys need to be censoring yourselves for love. Did I say it in a nice enough voice? Can you hear the nice flowery music in the background? Okay, let's see what else. And the last issue that was brought up, and I agree with this, is that it's the parents' job to shield the kids from this. I agree. Actually, one more issue too. That's the parents' job, right? And I agree, it is the parents' job. They should be shielding their kids from this stuff, right? But as we all know, like I mentioned in the previous video, it doesn't always work. Sometimes it does. It was a good point. I agree with the person who made this point. Yes, it's the parents' job to comfort, to heal, to keep their kids healthy, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Yes, but it doesn't always happen, and it doesn't always work, as we all know. So, these people who are putting the material out in the first place need to realize that fact and regulate themselves on behalf of the people, the kids they're influencing. We don't need a PMRC. We don't need a governmental agency. We need people who are acting in love as their highest value. And the last issue that was brought up was the fact that, and I didn't know this, okay, I bagged on Metallica for not being philanthropic, okay, and this person pointed out to me that Metallica has given millions of dollars to community colleges around the country. I did not know that. I was incorrect, and I admit that I am wrong. I was wrong when I said that. I apologize, James, Lars, Kirk, whoever your bassist is. I apologize. I didn't know you were doing that. So, the issue was that they gave all this money to community colleges, and that's a good thing. And I don't know the motives of their heart. I don't know why they did it, okay? That's fine. It's a good thing. It helps a lot of people. God bless them. But here's the thing, and I mentioned this in the other video, but people are just missing, not even listening. It's just going in one ear and out the other. That it's the oldest trick in the book. I grew up in Nevada. Casinos. I know casinos are all over now, but when I grew up, they weren't, okay? And so when you live in Nevada, you see how they work. They completely manipulate people and lie to people and do everything, total manipulation for one thing, to get their money. And it works. People are easily manipulated and deceived and out of their money. I watched it happen over and over and over growing up there and living there for however many years I lived there, most of my life, okay? I watched old people get their Social Security checks taken and be hopeless. I watched husbands lose their entire paychecks and be hopeless. I watched it more than once. My friends, okay? This is how casinos work. And then you know what they do? They legitimize themselves by doing something good. Okay? And then so that when people like me call them out on it, they can say, oh, but look, we're doing good. But duh. Sorry, I'm not using a nice voice. Okay, I'm using a nice, kind voice, guys. All you people out there. So, and maybe you're not doing it intentionally. I don't know whether you're doing it intentionally or not. But the fact that you're doing all this psychological damage to millions of people and not owning up to it, your good efforts in no way make up for that. They don't cancel it out. You've still done the damage. Okay? Of the few examples that I gave, and there's tons more that I could give, right? So, it's good that you're doing good things. I applaud that, and God bless you. I hope it helps you, right? I hope it helps them. I'm sure it does help a lot of people. It's a good thing. But it doesn't get you off the hook for all the other shitty stuff you've done. It doesn't just make it go away. There's still kids. They're lying in their beds, awake at night, with the words to Enter Sandman, which was written 30 years ago. Who gives a rat's ass? It's still being played. And those kids are listening to those words. It's the monster in your closet, under your bed, in your head. 4-year-olds are still listening to that shit while they're falling asleep. So you know what I say? Metallica and all you other bands, am I saying it in a nice enough voice? Pull your heads out of your ass. Okay, and last but not least, I was also told that there are worse things that happen to kids. Granted, I agree with that, there are. Okay? And the person who told me this is actively pursuing, fighting worthy battles, worthy causes. So kudos to you. You know who you are. I don't like to mention names on here. But you get an A+ for actually practicing what you preach. Okay? The comment that there are worse battles, yes, there are. I agree. Or that there are worse things that happen to kids. Yes, there are, and I agree. This happens to be an area that I see and I understand, so I have chosen to fight this battle. Yes, there are other battles that probably even more important, possibly, maybe, right? They vary in importance, but in life, we all have to choose our battles, and this is one that I have chosen to fight. Because why? Because I care about kids, and I care about what happens to them spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically, because it's important. And I was also told that I have no evidence to support what I'm saying. I have no evidence that that's happening to kids. Like, okay, what do you want me to do? Go find some clinical study to study the effects of words like, it's just a beast under your bed, in your closet, in your head, on 4-year-olds as they're falling asleep? Do we really need a clinical study to show this? And one more thing, I was also told that I was being judgmental. So let me get this straight. We're just supposed to let all these bands, because I was accused of picking on Metallica also, we're just supposed to let all these bands spew out this filth, this spiritual, mental, emotional, psychological, putrid filth that does affect kids, whether you want to admit it or not. You want to hide your head in the sand and say it doesn't, that's fine. And we're just supposed to sit back and be good Christians and say, I'm not going to judge. Who am I to judge?